Am I the a-hole for expecting a larger share of my late parents' estate after being their primary round-the-clock caregiver for 7 years, while my siblings lived their lives mostly unimpeded? This is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My family is currently in turmoil, and the situation is highly sensitive, involving significant emotional strain and potentially large sums of money. I am in my late 40s, single, and have spent the last 7 years as the primary caregiver for my parent, who recently passed away after a prolonged illness that required increasingly intensive support. When my parents' health began a serious decline around 7 years ago, it became clear they could no longer live independently and would require someone living with them or frequent dedicated assistance. At the time, my 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, were both married with young families and well-established careers several hours' drive away. I, on the other hand, was working a flexible job that didn't require me to be tied to a specific location and was not married or had children. After some initial difficult family discussions, where it became apparent neither of my siblings were willing or able to relocate or significantly alter their lives to provide the necessary daily care, I made the incredibly difficult decision, one I genuinely believed was the right thing to do for my parent and for our family, to move in and become their full-time caregiver. This wasn't a decision taken lightly. I essentially put my own life on hold. I transitioned my work to part-time, remote, which drastically cut my income, and eventually stopped working altogether as my parents' needs became overwhelming. I used up a significant portion of my savings to supplement my lost income and cover household expenses that went beyond my parents' fixed income, particularly towards the end when needs were highest. My life revolved entirely around appointments, medication schedules, meal preparation, personal care, managing their finances, housekeeping and providing constant companionship and supervision. Respite was rare and usually self-funded or orchestrated by me, often requiring me to hire outside help because my siblings' ability to visit was limited to weekends, usually just 1 or 2 a month on a good month, and sometimes less. And even those visits were often short and focused on spending time with our parent, rather than giving me a break from the actual caregiving tasks themselves. Over these 7 years, my siblings' lives continued relatively normally. They advanced in their careers. Their children grew up, they took family vacations, they pursued hobbies and built equity in their homes, while they called regularly to speak with our parent and me, offering emotional support from a distance, and did visit when they could. As mentioned, the actual, hands-on, day-to-day, hour-by-hour work of caregiving fell squarely on my shoulders. There were countless sleepless nights, moments of intense physical strain, emotional exhaustion that is difficult to articulate, and the crushing weight of responsibility that permeated every aspect of my existence. I missed out on social events, dating, opportunities to advance my own career, and the ability to build my own financial security during what should have been peak earning years. My savings are depleted, my career is stagnant, and re-entering the job market after such a long gap, focusing solely on caregiving, feels incredibly daunting and uncertain. I made these sacrifices willingly at the time because I loved my parent deeply and felt it was my duty, especially since I was in a unique position compared to my siblings, to do so without uprooting a young family. I never explicitly asked for financial compensation from my siblings during this period, though they occasionally offered small amounts towards specific expenses, which I usually declined, focusing instead on just getting the care done. We never had formal family meetings about burden sharing or potential future compensation for my role. It was a quiet understanding that I was doing the necessary work because they couldn't or wouldn't. Now, my parent has passed away, and the difficult process of settling their estate has begun. The estate consists primarily of the family home, which has appreciated significantly over the years, and some liquid assets from savings and investments. My parents' will, drafted many years ago before their health declined and before the extensive period of caregiving, simply states that the estate is to be divided equally among their 3 children. My siblings are proceeding with the assumption that this means everything will be split 3 ways, 33.3% each, after debts, taxes, and final expenses are paid. However, I have raised the point that my 7 years of intensive, unpaid caregiving, the magnitude of the personal sacrifices I made, the loss of income and career progression, and the sheer 24/7 nature of the work I performed, which saved the estate considerable expense compared to professional in-home care or a nursing home for such a long duration, should be taken into account. I haven't demanded a specific amount yet, but I've suggested that a strict 33.3% split feels incredibly unfair given the circumstances. I've proposed that perhaps I should receive a larger percentage of the sale of the house, or perhaps receive the house outright and the other assets be split between my siblings, or some other arrangement that acknowledges the immense value of my contribution and sacrifice over nearly a decade. I framed it not just as compensation for work, but as recognition of the life I put on hold and the financial precariousness I now face because I prioritized our parents' well-being when my siblings couldn't or wouldn't step up in the same way. The reaction from my siblings has been overwhelmingly negative, bordering on hostile. They argue that my care was just being a good daughter and that I chose to do it, implying it wasn't a job I was forced into. They claim that my sacrifice is being exaggerated and that they also contributed in their own ways. The calls, the occasional visits, sending cards, etc. They bring up that I lived in the family home rent-free, conveniently overlooking that I was in constant service and couldn't leave, that the house was my workplace and my prison simultaneously. They say that Mom-Dad wanted everything split equally, and that going against the will is disrespectful to our parents' wishes and is motivated purely by greed on my part. They accuse me of trying to take advantage of the situation for financial gain now that our parent is gone. My sister even said that my expectations are entitled and that family helps family, implying I should have done it out of love without any expectation of financial recognition from the estate. My brother is threatening legal action if I attempt to block the equal distribution outlined in the will. The beautiful, albeit strained family dynamic we managed to maintain during the caregiving years has shattered. I am left questioning everything. Was my caregiving truly just a choice? And should I have expected nothing in return but the satisfaction of caring for a loved one? Am I being greedy by wanting more than an equal share, essentially seeking financial recognition for years of unpaid labor and lost opportunity? Should the will, written before the reality of years of intensive caregiving set in, be the absolute final word regardless of the drastically changed circumstances and the unequal burden carried? My siblings believe I am the a-hole for even suggesting. I deserve more than them from the estate. I feel deeply hurt and betrayed by their lack of acknowledgement of my sacrifices and the immense physical, emotional, and financial toll the caregiving took on me. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my siblings permanently, but I also feel that an equal split is profoundly unjust, given the context, and leaves me in a significantly worse financial position than them after years of dedicated service to our parent and the family unit. I am torn between what feels fair and just given the reality of the last 7 years and upholding what is mechanically stated in the will and what my siblings consider equal. I am asking for perspective from outside the family bubble. Am I the a-hole for believing I should receive more than an equal share of the estate because I was the sole long-term primary caregiver? Here is the situation I find myself in, and I am genuinely struggling with whether my position makes me the a-hole in this deeply painful family matter. My sibling and I are the only remaining close relatives of our mother, who passed away a few months ago after a multi-year battle with a debilitating illness that required increasingly intensive care. The core of the conflict lies in the inheritance, specifically the family home, and how the distribution of its value should reflect the vastly different levels of care provided to our mother in her final years. The house itself isn't a mansion, but it's a solid, paid-off property in a desirable location, and it represents the bulk of our mother's estate's value, likely worth somewhere in the region of $500,000 to $600,000 based on current market conditions, maybe more. Mother's will is straightforward and uncomplicated. It leaves everything, including the house, to be split equally between her 2 children, myself and my sibling, Jamie. For the past 5 years, since Mother's illness progressed to the point Where she could no longer live fully independently, I have been her primary, and for significant periods her only caregiver. This started gradually, helping with appointments, managing medications, ensuring she ate properly. It escalated to needing assistance with mobility, hygiene, meal preparation, round-the-clock monitoring for safety, managing nurses and physical therapists, dealing with medical emergencies, and simply being there. Being constantly available, sacrificing time at work, cancelling social plans, putting my own life, my nascent relationship, my hobbies, my general freedom and peace of mind, on hold. I moved into her house 3 years ago because it became clear she couldn't be left alone for more than a few hours at a time, and frankly, the cost of full-time professional care was prohibitive, and Mother was resistant to leaving her home. It was an incredibly difficult period, emotionally, physically, and mentally exhausting. There were sleepless nights dealing with her discomfort or confusion, frustrating days navigating bureaucracy and healthcare systems, and the constant emotional burden of watching her decline while trying to maintain her dignity and comfort. I managed her finances, paid her bills, kept the house from falling into disrepair when I had a spare moment, and essentially became her world, and her needs became my life's focus. During this same 5-year period, Jamie lived about a 3-hour drive away. While Jamie would call occasionally, perhaps once a week or every 2 weeks, and visit maybe once every 2 or 3 months, the visits were typically brief, a single weekend day or two at most. When Jamie visited, it was often more of a social call than hands-on caregiving. Jamie would sit and chat with Mother, maybe help with one meal, but the heavy lifting, the bathing, the lifting, the dealing with incontinence, the medication, schedules, the night shifts, that all fell squarely on my shoulders. Jamie always had reasons for not doing more. The distance was too great for frequent trips, work was too demanding, their own family needed their attention, they weren't good with illness or caregiving, it was too emotionally difficult for them. I tried gently at first and then more directly to ask for more help, financial contribution towards care costs, even simple things like groceries or medical supplies, taking Mother for appointments when I couldn't get time off work, or even just coming for a full week to give me a break. The requests were usually met with excuses, promises that never materialized, or sometimes quiet resentment that I was even asking. It felt like Jamie was leading a normal life, progressing in their career, going on vacations, while my life had shrunk to the 4 walls of our mother's needs and the constant draining routine of care. I never explicitly tracked hours or kept a ledger of sacrifices, but the imbalance in contribution was stark, undeniable, and deeply felt by me. Now, Mother has passed away. It was a relief in the sense that her suffering is over, but the grief is profound, compounded by the exhaustion of the preceding years. As the executor of the will, I have been handling all the practicalities, the funeral arrangements, sorting through belongings, dealing with paperwork, and now the significant task of managing the estate, which primarily means deciding what to do with the house. According to the will, it's to be split 50-50. Jamie's expectation, articulated quite clearly and somewhat casually shortly after the funeral, is that we will sell the house and split the proceeds exactly down the middle. It's what the will says, Jamie stated, as if that were the only relevant factor in this entire equation. This is where my internal conflict and, according to Jamie, my potential a-holeness begins. I don't think a 50-50 split of the house's value is fair. I spent years of my life essentially providing full-time, unpaid, round-the-clock care, sacrificing my career trajectory, my personal life, my health at times, and enduring immense emotional and physical strain. I maintained the house, paid utilities from Mother's account which I managed, often supplementing from my own pockets when funds were tight towards the end, and ensured the property didn't deteriorate while Jamie contributed minimal time, effort, or financial support towards Mother's care, or upkeep of the asset we were both set to inherit. I believe my years of caregiving constitute a significant contribution to the preservation of the estate's value, and more importantly, a debt that should be acknowledged in the distribution of assets. It feels fundamentally unjust for Jamie, who was largely absent from the immense burden of caregiving, to walk away with an equal share of the inheritance as I, who bore the brunt of those years. My proposal to Jamie was this: I would like to keep the house. It's been my home for the last 3 years. It holds significant emotional value, and I am frankly exhausted and not in a position to easily find and move into a new place, while also grieving and dealing with all the estate matters. My proposal, to buy Jamie out, was for a significantly reduced amount than half the market value, perhaps 25–30% of the total value, reflecting what I feel is a fairer distribution, acknowledging my caregiving contribution. Another option I considered and mentioned was selling but taking a larger percentage of the proceeds, something like 70–30 or even 75–25 in my favor, again, directly attributing the difference to the caregiving years. I framed this not as punishment, but as compensation for the years of unpaid labor and sacrifice that preserved the asset and allowed Mother to stay in her home, which was her deepest wish. I argued that if we had paid for professional care, for those 3 years I lived there, even part-time care would have easily depleted a significant portion, if not all, of the house's equivalent value, and Jamie would have received far less, if anything. My care saved the estate money that Jamie now wants half of without having contributed equally to the work that saved it. Jamie reacted with shock, anger, and accusations of greed. My sibling insists that the will is the will, and Mother intended for us to split everything equally, period. Jamie says that while they appreciate that I did a lot, that was my choice, and it doesn't entitle me to rewrite Mother's clear instructions in her will. Jamie argued that their emotional support, the phone calls, the brief visits, was their way of contributing, and that I am minimizing their feelings and the distance they had to travel. Jamie accused me of trying to take advantage of the situation, of being selfish, and of disrespecting Mother's final wishes. Other family members, distant cousins mostly, have heard about the disagreement and are divided. Some understand my position, having witnessed the burden I carried firsthand, while others feel bound by the sanctity of the will and believe I should honor Mother's written word, regardless of the circumstances surrounding the years leading up to her death. The conflict has become incredibly bitter, adding another layer of pain to the grieving process. I am exhausted, emotionally drained, and now facing a potential legal battle with my only sibling over this house. I question whether my demand for a larger share, while feeling entirely justified to me given the sacrifices I made, overrides Mother's explicit instruction for an equal split in her will. Does my caregiving, however extensive and difficult, give me the right to deviate from her stated wishes and ask for more than half? Am I the a-hole for believing my years of unpaid caregiving and sacrifice entitle me to a larger portion of the inheritance, specifically the family home, than my sibling, who was largely absent from the caregiving responsibilities, despite our Mother's will stating an equal 50–50 split between us? So Reddit, am I the a-hole? I am a 35-year-old woman who has been with my husband for 10 years and married for 5. We have 2 beautiful children together, a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. My husband and I have always had a good relationship with open communication and a strong partnership. However, recently I did something that has caused a rift in our marriage, and I'm not sure if I'm the a-hole in this situation. It all started when my husband's grandmother passed away. She was a wonderful woman who had always been there for us, and we were all devastated by her loss. At the funeral, I met my husband's cousin, whom I had never met before. He was a few years older than us and had recently gone through a divorce. We hit it off immediately and spent the entire funeral talking and getting to know each other. After the funeral, we exchanged numbers and started texting each other. We would talk about everything, from our jobs to our hobbies to our relationships. I found myself looking forward to his messages and feeling a connection to him that I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew it was wrong to feel this way, but I couldn't help it. One night, my husband was out with his friends and I was home alone with the kids. I received a message from my cousin asking how I was doing. We started talking, and before I knew it, we were flirting with each other. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but I couldn't resist. We ended up having phone sex, and it was the most exhilarating experience I had had in a long time. I immediately regretted what I had done and felt guilty for betraying my husband's trust. I knew I had to tell him what had happened, so I confessed everything to him. He was devastated and couldn't believe that I would do something like this. He said he needed time to think and left to stay with his parents for a few days. When he came back, we talked about what had happened, and he said he forgave me, but things were never the same between us. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and I knew I had caused irreparable damage to our relationship. I tried to make it up to him by being the best wife and mother I could be, but it wasn't enough. He said he couldn't trust me anymore, and that our relationship would never be the same. Now I'm left feeling like I'm the a-hole in this situation. I know what I did was wrong, and I regret it every day. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. I've lost the trust and respect of the person I love the most, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to get it back. I know I need to move on and learn from my mistakes, but it's not easy when I'm constantly reminded of what I've done. So, am I the a-hole for having an emotional and physical affair with my husband's cousin, causing irreparable damage to my marriage? I know what I did was wrong, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I just wish I could turn back time and make a different choice. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my stepsister's destination wedding, when my own wedding is on hold due to her mother's financial irresponsibility? Okay, Reddit, buckle up, because this is a long and complicated one, and I'm seriously second-guessing everything right now. I, 32M, am engaged to Sarah, 31F, and we've been together for 6 years. We've been planning our wedding for over a year, saving meticulously, and putting down deposits on venues, photographers, everything. It was supposed to be this coming autumn, a beautiful, rustic, chic affair in the vineyards. Enter my stepmother, Deborah, 58F, and her daughter Tiffany, 28F, my stepsister. Deborah and my father got married 3 years ago after my mother passed away. Long story, but he was incredibly lonely, and Deborah seemed nice enough at the time. Tiffany has always been a handful. She's perpetually unemployed, constantly chasing fleeting dreams of becoming an influencer, singer, entrepreneur, insert latest buzzword here, and generally relies on Deborah for financial support. We've always maintained a polite distance, but things have escalated exponentially in the last few months. A few weeks ago, Tiffany announced her engagement to Chad, 30M, a perfectly pleasant but equally ambitionless guy she met online. Fine. Congrats. We sent a card. Then came the bombshell. They're planning a destination wedding in Bali. Bali. As in thousands of miles away, exotic, expensive Bali. And of course, they expect everyone in the family to attend. The problem isn't just the inconvenience, or the cost of flights and accommodation. The real issue is that Deborah, who already struggles to manage her finances, has apparently promised to foot a significant portion of the wedding bill. This wouldn't be an issue normally, as it is her decision, but Deborah has been having some medical struggles. Now here's where it directly impacts Sarah and me. My father, bless his heart, and his eternally optimistic outlook, has always kept his finances separate from Deborah's, understanding her tendencies. However, a few months ago, Deborah convinced him to co-sign a loan for a massive kitchen renovation she wanted to do. He reluctantly agreed, trusting her assurances that she could manage the repayments. Predictably, she can't. She's missed several payments, and the bank is now threatening foreclosure on their house. This is where it gets truly ugly. My father, desperate to avoid losing his home, asked me if I could loan him a significant sum of money to cover the arrears and restructure the loan. He promised to pay me back over time, and I know he's good for it. He's always been responsible and worked hard. The problem is the amount he needs is essentially all of the money Sarah and I have saved for our wedding. Giving him the money would mean postponing our wedding indefinitely. We were absolutely devastated. We talked for hours, cried, and ultimately decided that we couldn't let my father lose his house. We reluctantly agreed to loan him the money, putting our wedding plans on hold. It was a huge sacrifice, but we felt it was the right thing to do. I made it clear to Deborah, perhaps not as gently as I could have, that her financial irresponsibility had directly impacted our lives and that we were incredibly disappointed. She brushed it off, saying that family helps family and that things would work out. Now back to Tiffany's Bali wedding. Invitations arrived last week, complete with a detailed itinerary and a breakdown of estimated costs. It's astronomical. Flights alone are thousands of dollars per person, not to mention accommodation, food, and the inevitable wedding gifts. Deborah, in a moment of breathtaking audacity, called me yesterday and asked if Sarah and I would be contributing to the wedding fund. She said that Tiffany was struggling to meet all the costs, and that since we were doing so well, clearly oblivious to the fact that our wedding is now on hold because of her financial mismanagement, it would be a wonderful gesture of family support. I lost it. I told her in no uncertain terms that there was absolutely no way we were contributing a single penny to Tiffany's extravagant destination wedding. I reminded her that our own wedding was on hold because we had bailed her out of a financial mess, and that expecting us to then fund her daughter's lavish party was beyond insulting. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive and said that I was ruining Tiffany's special day. Furthermore, she brought up the fact that I make significantly more than Tiffany, stating that it's my responsibility to help my family. I explained that the money was not mine alone, but also Sarah's savings, and that helping my father out with his loan struggles was the priority. She argued that my father could figure it out on his own, and that helping Tiffany on her big day was more vital. Sarah, who was listening on speakerphone, chimed in and told Deborah that her lack of responsibility was appalling. Things got heated, and the call ended with Deborah hanging up on us. Now the entire family is taking sides. My father is caught in the middle, trying to appease everyone. He understands our position, but also feels obligated to support his wife and stepdaughter. Tiffany is furious with me, calling me a miserly Scrooge and accusing me of deliberately trying to sabotage her happiness. Other relatives are putting pressure on us, saying that we should put our differences aside and celebrate family. Some of them are even suggesting that we should remortgage our house to cover the wedding costs. I am beyond stressed. I feel like I'm being gaslighted into believing that I'm the bad guy here, when all I'm trying to do is protect my own financial future and support my father. So Reddit, tell me honestly, am I the a-hole for refusing to contribute to my stepsister's destination wedding? When my own wedding is on hold because of her mother's financial irresponsibility, is it unreasonable for me to expect some understanding and support from my family? Or am I being selfish and petty? I need an objective perspective before I completely lose my mind. I genuinely want to be a good son, fiancé, and family member, but I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. Please help me see this clearly. I'm open to any and all advice, even if it means admitting that I'm wrong. I just want to do what's right, but I'm starting to doubt my own judgment. This entire situation has been incredibly draining and emotionally taxing, and I'm desperate for some clarity. Thank you in advance for your honest opinions. I will provide further information and updates as needed. Also, Sarah and I have considered eloping, but that might cause even more family drama. Lastly, I think Tiffany's intentions aren't bad, but that she is just surrounded by adults who enabled her behavior. What is your advice? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister use my wedding venue after she eloped and insulted my fiancé? This is a long one, folks. Buckle up. My sister, Sarah, 27F, and I, 30F, have always had a complicated relationship. She's always been the free spirit, the one who doesn't care what people think, which often translates to her doing whatever she wants, without considering the consequences or who she hurts. I, on the other hand, am more of a planner, a responsible type who actually thinks things through. My fiancé, Mark, 32M, is the most wonderful man I've ever met. He's kind, supportive, and incredibly intelligent. We've been together for 5 years and engaged for 1. We spent the last year planning our dream wedding, a beautiful outdoor affair at a vineyard we both fell in love with. We put down a non-refundable deposit, booked the caterers, the photographer, the band, the whole shebang. It was expensive, yes, but we had saved up for it, and we were so excited to celebrate our love with our friends and family. Enter Sarah. A few weeks ago, Sarah announced that she and her boyfriend of 6 months, Chad, I know, had eloped in Vegas. No big deal, elope if you want, it's your life. But then came the snide comments. She started making remarks about how weddings are just performances for other people and a waste of money. At first I tried to brush it off, but she kept going, specifically targeting Mark. She implied that he was boring and settling, and even went so far as to say she didn't understand what I saw in him. This was particularly hurtful, because I know she's always subtly felt competitive with my partners. Then the audacity happened. Yesterday, Sarah called me practically giddy. She and Chad, apparently regretting their Vegas decision, surprise, wanted to throw a real wedding reception to celebrate with their friends and family. And guess where they wanted to have it? At my wedding venue, the vineyard we booked and paid for, the one we've been planning to use for a year. She said it would be perfect for them, and since my wedding was still a few months away, it wouldn't be a problem. She even suggested that we could share the venue, as in, she'd have her reception a month before my actual wedding. I was speechless. I told her absolutely not. It's my wedding venue, I've paid for it, and I don't want her celebrating her spur-of-the-moment elopement there, especially after the things she said about my wedding and Mark. She accused me of being selfish and controlling, saying that I was ruining her chance to have a proper celebration. She even brought up the fact that our parents were disappointed that she eloped and that this would be a way to make them happy. I held my ground. I refused to let her use my wedding venue. Mark is furious as well, especially considering her earlier comments. Now our whole family is involved. Our parents are pressuring me to be understanding and let Sarah have her fun. They say it's just a reception and it wouldn't be a big deal. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh and that I should just let it go to keep the peace. But, honestly, I feel like I'm being gaslighted. This is my wedding, my venue, my special day. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister, who eloped and insulted my fiancé, use my wedding venue for her reception? I'm standing firm, but the pressure is mounting from all sides. What do you think? Am I the a-hole for using an inherited family home and extensive land to establish a non-profit community garden and educational preserve, instead of selling it and distributing the potentially significant profits among my siblings and myself? This is a situation that has completely blown up my life and fractured my family in ways I never anticipated, leaving me isolated and questioning everything I thought was right. Our grandmother, Ilara, passed away 18 months ago at the age of 92. There were 3 of us grandchildren, my older brother, Mark, 45, my older sister, Sarah, 42, and myself, Alex, 38. Grandma Ilara was a force of nature, a woman deeply rooted in the earth, a lifelong amateur botanist, environmentalist before it was popular, and the sole owner of a magnificent, though aging property that had been in our family for over a century. The estate consisted of a sprawling old farmhouse, beautiful but in need of considerable repair, situated on 20 acres of land. About 5 acres were manicured gardens that Grandma tended herself well into her late 80s. Another 10 were meadows and mature woodland she meticulously preserved, and the remaining 5 were various outbuildings, an old orchard, and neglected pastures. It was a place of immense natural beauty and profound sentimental value. The heart of our family's history, the site of countless holidays, summer visits, and cherished childhood memories for all of us. Mark and Sarah had a more conventional relationship with Grandma Ilara. They lived closer for most of their adult lives, visited regularly, helped with her shopping or appointments as she got older, and generally played the part of dutiful, traditional grandchildren. They always saw the property as a valuable asset, often speculating even when Grandma was alive about its market value, discussing potential developers, and envisioning the payout they believed would eventually come. They have families, mortgages, and the typical financial pressures of upper-middle-class life, and they made no secret of the fact that they viewed the inheritance from Grandma, particularly the sale of the big house, as a significant financial cushion or even a windfall they were counting on. I, on the other hand, had a different connection with Grandma Ilara and the property. I was the slightly unconventional one, the artistic child who pursued a less traditional career path, moved to different cities, and didn't settle down in the conventional sense. While I wasn't geographically as close as Mark and Sarah in recent years, my bond with Grandma was forged in a shared passion for the land itself. From a young age, she taught me about plants, soil, birds, insects, the delicate balance of the ecosystem on her property. We spent hours together in the garden, walking the woods, or poring over her extensive collection of botanical books. She instilled in me a deep respect and love for nature that shaped my worldview and ultimately influenced my career path in environmental education and conservation. My siblings never understood this connection. They saw dirt, work, and potential. Cash, while I saw life, heritage, and a living legacy. Over the years, our conversations were less about the house as a structure or asset, and more about the ancient oak tree, the migrating birds, the specific species of wildflowers, and her dreams of keeping the land wild and accessible in some way. When Grandma Ilara's will was read, there was an audible gasp from Mark and Sarah. The will was surprisingly straightforward, cutting through any unspoken assumptions like a sharp spade through soil. After specific bequests of personal items and smaller sums of money to various relatives and charities, the vast majority of her estate, including the house and the entire 20 acres of land, was left solely to me. The will explicitly stated that it was left to me because Alex understands the true value of this land and shares my dream for its future, and included wishes, though not legally binding directives, that the property be used to benefit the community and honor her love for nature. Mark and Sarah received generous, though significantly smaller cash sums, equivalent to what Grandma felt was fair to them, based on their needs she was aware of and other considerations not related to the property itself. Their immediate reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was shock and a swiftly building resentment. They couldn't comprehend why the most valuable asset wasn't divided equally. Arguments started almost immediately after the lawyer finished reading, right there in his office. They accused me of manipulating Grandma, of somehow taking advantage of her in her final years, despite the fact that I lived clear across the country and hadn't seen her in person for several months before she passed, due to health and logistical constraints, not lack of trying. They insisted that Grandma must have been confused or pressured, that this wasn't fair, that as the elder siblings they had more right to the legacy of the family home than the transient younger sibling who didn't even live in the same state. I tried to explain that this was Grandma's clear wish, that she had discussed her ideas for the land's future with me many times over the years, but they weren't listening. They saw millions tied up in real estate that they felt was rightfully theirs to share. Over the next few months, the pressure from Mark and Sarah was relentless. They called constantly, sometimes individually, sometimes tag-teaming, urging me to sell the property. They sent me listings of comparable sales in the area, calculated potential proceeds after taxes and fees, and even contacted developers on my behalf, presenting me with unsolicited offers that were, admittedly, substantial. They talked about how the money could help them pay off their mortgages, fund their kids' college educations, or allow them to retire earlier. Their focus was entirely on the monetary value, treating the house and land as a commodity to be liquidated. My attempts to discuss Grandma's wishes, my own feelings about the property or alternative ideas, were met with impatience, eye-rolling, or outright anger. They couldn't grasp why I would prioritize fuzzy concepts like preserving nature or community benefit over a guaranteed multi-million-dollar payout that would benefit our immediate family, meaning them primarily. I spent considerable time on the property, walking the land, exploring the house, thinking deeply about Grandma and her legacy. The house needed significant structural work, updating plumbing and electrical, fixing the roof, dealing with damp in the basement, but the land was magnificent, a haven for local wildlife, and a potential oasis in a rapidly developing suburban area. Remembering Grandma's light in her eyes when she talked about sharing the beauty of her gardens, teaching children about where food comes from, or protecting the old-growth section of the woods solidified my resolve. I started researching non-profit models, looking into conservation easements, talking to people who ran community gardens, and consulting with environmental educators. I developed a plan, a vision that felt true to Grandma Ilara's spirit and wishes as I understood them. My plan was to establish a non-profit foundation, deed the land and house to it, and transform the property into a vibrant community garden, a nature preserve with walking trails open to the public, and an educational center housed in the renovated farmhouse, offering workshops on sustainable gardening, ecology, and local history. It would be a place for school groups, neighborhood families, local nature enthusiasts, and anyone seeking a connection with the land. It would require significant fundraising beyond the value of the property itself to renovate the house and establish an endowment for long-term maintenance and staffing, but I was prepared to dedicate not only the inherited asset, but also my time, energy, and a significant portion of my personal savings to make it happen. I felt a sense of purpose and excitement about this project, believing it to be a far more meaningful way to honor Grandma Ilara than simply cashing out. When I finally presented my plan to Mark and Sarah, not asking for their permission, but informing them of my decision and hoping, perhaps foolishly, for some understanding or even support, the reaction was volcanic. They accused me of being incredibly selfish, naive, and financially irresponsible. Sarah burst into tears, railing that I was stealing her children's inheritance. Mark's face turned red as he shouted that I was squandering the family's wealth on some pie-in-the-sky hippie commune, instead of acting like a responsible adult and sharing the assets. They called me insulting names, questioned my sanity, and accused me of prioritizing strangers and plants over my own family. They brought up every perceived slight from our childhood, every time I hadn't conformed to their expectations, painting a picture of me as the unpredictable, unreliable sibling who was now proving just how unfit I was by destroying their financial dreams. They argued that Grandma's wishes were just vague, sentimental ramblings and that the real legacy was the economic security the property could provide for her descendants. They insisted that by not selling, I was disrespecting Grandma's hard work accumulating wealth and going against the practical nature of our family. They refused to see any value in the community project, framing it purely as my personal indulgence that came at their direct financial expense. They threatened legal action, although my lawyer has confirmed that the will is clear and the property is legally mine to do with as I please. They've rallied other, more distant family members, painting me as the villain who inherited everything and hoarded it, denying my own siblings their rightful share. Family gatherings have become unbearable or non-existent. My relationship with Mark and Sarah is effectively destroyed. I understand their disappointment. I understand that they had expectations about that money, and I know that selling the property would have provided them and their families with significant financial relief. Part of me wonders if I am being selfish, prioritizing a potentially challenging non-profit project over the immediate financial needs of my siblings. Maybe Grandma was just being sentimental, and the pragmatic thing to do is to sell. The scale of their anger and the depth of the family rift have made me doubt myself. Was I wrong to interpret Grandma's wishes this way? Was I wrong to prioritize a community environmental vision over direct family financial gain, especially when the asset was so valuable and their expectation was so strong? Should I have tried harder to find a compromise, although I honestly don't know what a compromise would look like that satisfies their desire for cash and my desire to preserve the land and honor Grandma's vision? This has caused immense stress and sorrow. So, am I the a-hole for proceeding with my plan to turn the inherited family home and land into a community garden and nature preserve, knowing it means my siblings will not receive any financial benefit from the property's market value? Am I the a-hole for telling my deadbeat brother, who did absolutely nothing to help our mother for a decade, that he gets zero say and zero money from the sale of her house because it's needed entirely for her future care? Okay, Reddit, brace yourselves, this is not short. There are probably 10 years of simmering resentment and sacrifice that boiled over this week, and while I feel completely justified in what I did, the fallout has been immense, and I'm starting to doubt myself based on how others are reacting. I need some outside perspective, free from the tangled history and emotional baggage of my family. Let me start with the necessary background. My mother, Eleanor, is now 78 years old. She's a wonderful woman, but her health started declining significantly about 10 years ago, specifically with increasing mobility issues and the early stages of cognitive decline. Nothing that required immediate institutionalization, but enough that living alone was becoming untenable and, frankly, dangerous. She lived about an hour's drive away from me, I'm 45F, and about a 3-hour drive from my younger brother, Liam, 42. Liam has always been the charming, golden child, good-looking, charismatic, full of big ideas and promises, but with absolutely zero follow-through and a truly impressive talent for getting himself into financial trouble. He's bounced from job to job, racks up debt, and has a string of failed ventures and relationships behind him. Our parents, Dad passed away 15 years ago, always enabled him to some extent, constantly bailing him out, which I think is part of the problem now. When Mom's health started getting bad, the conversation naturally turned to how she would be cared, for she didn't want to leave her home, a small but comfortable house she'd lived in for 40 years. She had some savings, but not enough for full-time professional home care long-term. My husband, Mark, and I had stable jobs, but were still raising our 2 kids, teenagers at the time. Liam was naturally between jobs and figuring things out in a city 3 hours away, constantly asking Mum for small amounts of money to tide him over. We had a family discussion. Well, Mark and I had a discussion with Mom, with Liam, on speakerphone, mostly offering vague platitudes about how important family is, but no concrete offers of help. The options were, Mom moves in with one of us. She moves to assisted living immediately, which she was dead set against and couldn't fully afford anyway, or someone steps up to be her primary support system in her own home. Given the distance and Liam's perpetual state of personal chaos, it quickly became clear that if Mum was staying put, I was the one who would be doing the heavy lifting. Mark and I talked it over extensively. It was a huge decision. It would mean sacrificing my career progression. I was in a field that required consistent in-office presence and long hours, using up our limited savings for her immediate needs, not covered by her pension, our small savings, and completely restructuring our lives. But she was my mother. She wanted to stay home, and Liam wasn't an option. So I agreed. For the next 10 years, my life became centered around Mom's care. I shifted to a part-time, then mostly freelance role, which drastically cut my income, but gave me the flexibility to drive to her house multiple times a week, take her to appointments, manage her medications, handle her finances, grocery shop, clean, cook, arrange for the occasional paid help when I couldn't be there, and just generally be present. This also meant saying no to work projects that would have advanced my career significantly, using my own money when Mum's ran short for things like unexpected medical bills or home repairs, and constantly being on call. Mark was incredibly supportive, taking on more at home and being my rock, but the burden was disproportionately on me because I was the one with the flexible, sacrificed schedule. And Liam, oh Liam, his contributions were minimal, to put it mildly. He'd call Mom maybe once or twice a month. Visits were rare, maybe 1 or 2 a year, always planned last minute, often cancelled or cut short, and sometimes involved him needing a place to crash or even asking Mom or me for money while he was there. He never offered to pay for anything, never helped with chores when visiting, never spent a night actually caring for Mom so I could get a break. His excuse was always the distance, or his difficult circumstances, or some vague promise to make it up later. I tried talking to him gently at first, then more directly as my resentment grew. I'd explain how exhausted I was, how much time and money this was costing me, and how Mom needed both of us. His responses ranged from, "Wow, that sounds tough, you're a saint," to "I wish I could help more, but you know my situation," to occasionally defensiveness like, "I call her, don't I? She seems fine when I talk to her." He seemed genuinely oblivious to the reality of hands-on caregiving. He viewed it, I think, as something I just did, like a hobby, not a demanding, life-altering responsibility. Mom, bless her heart, would often cover for him or minimize his absence. "Oh, Liam's so busy with his new project," or "He called just the other day, he was asking about me." I think she felt guilty about his struggles and maybe didn't want to cause conflict, or maybe her own decline meant she didn't fully grasp the imbalance. Fast forward 10 years. Mum's health has declined further. She needs more constant supervision, help with personal care, and her mobility is much more restricted. Home care is no longer sufficient, or rather, the level she needs is prohibitively expensive, far more than her savings, my contributions, over the years, and her small pension combined could cover for any significant time. The difficult but necessary truth became apparent. Mom needs to move into a good assisted living facility that can provide the level of care she requires. This was a hard decision emotionally for Mom and me. The only way to afford a reputable place, one that is clean, safe, and has caring staff, is to sell her house. The house, while modest, is in a desirable neighborhood, and the market is currently good. The proceeds from the sale, combined with her remaining savings and pension, should provide enough funds to cover her care for several years, hopefully for the rest of her life. It wasn't ideal. I had always hoped the house might be something split between Liam and me eventually, or provide a small nest egg for us after Mom was gone. But Mom's well-being is paramount, and the house is her only significant asset, left to fund her care. We, meaning Mark, Mum, and I, put the house on the market a few weeks ago. I handled everything, finding a realtor, decluttering, which was a massive undertaking given Mum's years there, arranging minor repairs, staging, coordinating showings, getting power of attorney finalized so I could handle the sale for Mom. Liam was informed by text message that the house was going on the market to fund Mum's move to assisted living. He replied with a sad face emoji and hope she finds a good place. Minimal engagement as usual. Then, this past weekend, everything blew up. We received a solid offer on the house, slightly above asking. I called Mom, she was happy. I called Liam, thinking I was being courteous by giving him the update before the "for sale" sign was even down. His reaction was not what I expected, but maybe it should have been. His first question wasn't, "Is Mom okay with the offer, or is it enough for her care?" It was, "Okay, so what's my cut?" I was stunned into silence for a moment. "Your cut?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Yeah." "My half," he said, his tone hardening slightly. "The house is Mom's asset. When it's sold, the money gets split, right? Or are you planning on keeping it all?" I felt something inside me just snap. 10 years. 10 years of putting my life on hold. 10 years of driving back and forth, managing doctors, dealing with emergencies, spending my own money, sacrificing my career, my time, my energy, my mental health. 10 years of him being completely absent, offering nothing but excuses and occasionally asking for handouts. And now he thought he was entitled to half the money from the only asset left, money that is desperately needed right now for Mum's basic needs and survival. "Liam," I said, and my voice was cold, flat. "There is no cut for you, there is no half, there is no money for you." "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "That's Mom's money, that's my inheritance." "Your inheritance?" I repeated the damn. Breaking. Your inheritance is the decade of care you didn't provide. Your inheritance is the dozens of times you canceled on her, the hundreds of calls you didn't answer, the thousands of hours of care I provided that you apparently think just materialized out of thin air. That money isn't inheritance, Liam. It's funding the care Mum needs to live. Every single cent of it is going towards her facility, her medical costs, her comfort for whatever time she has left. I didn't stop there. All the pent-up frustration, the exhaustion, the feeling of being taken advantage of, it all came pouring out. Where were you, Liam? Where the hell were you for the last 10 years while I was changing her bandages, taking her to chemo? Note, modified scenario slightly for added detail stakes. Maybe Mom had a health scare previously, sitting with her. Afterfalls, managing her medications, dealing with her confusion, sacrificing my job and my own family's finances. You were off living your life, racking up debt, occasionally calling to ask her for $20. You think you get to swoop in. Now, when the only thing left is the money needed for her survival and claim half? Absolutely not. He started yelling then, accusing me of being greedy, of manipulating Mum, of trying to steal his inheritance, of cutting him out, of being a cold, heartless bitch. He said I was punishing him for not being around, which wasn't fair because I knew his situation. Your situation? I yelled back, past caring about keeping the peace. Your situation was that you chose not to be here. You chose not to help. You chose yourself every single time. And now Mom needs this money because you weren't here to help contribute to her care at any point over the last decade. And her savings ran down faster because she was often helping you. So no, Liam, you get nothing. You have earned nothing towards the care of our mother, and you have no claim on the money needed to provide that care now. I told him that I had power of attorney specifically to manage Mum's affairs for her health and well-being, and that selling the house for her care was exactly within those rights, and that any attempt he made to contest it or cause trouble would be met with legal action. I would fund using my own money, not Mom's, because his actions for the last decade precluded him from having any moral or ethical claim, let alone legal, to funds required for Mom's essential needs. I hung up the phone before he could respond further. Since then, it's been a firestorm. Liam has been calling and texting non-stop, sending increasingly nasty messages. He's contacted other family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, telling them I'm kicking him out of his inheritance, that I'm abandoning Mom in a home just to steal her money, that I've always been jealous of him, and this is my revenge. Some family members, bless them, know the truth of the situation and have told him off or called me offering support, but others are more sympathetic to Liam. They remember the charming boy he was. They hear his sob story about being cut off and how unfair it is that the eldest gets everything. They say, but family is family. You can't just cut him out, or surely Mum would want him to have something, or he has his problems but he's still her son. A few have even suggested I should give him a small percentage, just to keep the peace, or because it's the right thing to do for brotherhood. This is where I'm starting to question myself. Did I handle it badly? Was there a kinder way to say it? Should I have just given him a token amount, even though it feels fundamentally wrong and is money Mom desperately needs? Am I the a-hole for prioritizing Mom's future care, needs entirely over my brother's perceived unearned entitlement to funds he did nothing to preserve or create after he abandoned his responsibilities for a decade? Did I go too far in listing his failures? Was cutting him off entirely, both from the money and from any say in Mom's final financial decisions, the right thing to do, even if it blows up the family? Part of me feels absolutely certain I did the right thing. I sacrificed a decade for Mum. Mark sacrificed alongside me. We depleted our own resources to help her when necessary. Every cent from that house is needed for her care facility, which costs thousands per month. Liam contributed nothing to her care, financially or physically, or emotionally for years. He only showed up when he wanted something. Why on earth should he benefit now? But the other part of me, the part stung by the accusations from family members and the sheer nastiness of Liam's messages, wonders if I was too harsh, too final. Maybe I should have just calmly explained the finances without the decade's worth of stored-up anger. Maybe I should have offered him some symbolic item from the house instead of money. Maybe I should have just ignored his demand instead of confronting him head-on. I laid bare years of pain and sacrifice and called him out on his complete abdication of responsibility. And in doing so, I ignited a massive family conflict. I feel justified, but I also feel heartbroken and exhausted all over again. So Reddit, after hearing the full long saga, am I the a-hole for telling my brother, who was completely absent from our mother's care for a decade, that he gets no money? And no say from the sale of her house because the funds are 100% needed for her future care. I, 25F, have been with my boyfriend, 26M, for 3 years. We have a pretty good relationship, and I thought we were on the same page about our future together. That is, until recently. My boyfriend and I have been talking about taking the next step in our relationship and moving in together. We've been looking at apartments and have even put in a few applications. However, every time we talk about it, he seems hesitant and unsure. At first, I thought he was just nervous about the financial commitment, but then he dropped a bombshell on me. He told me that he doesn't want to move in with me because he doesn't think I'm wife material. I was shocked and hurt by his words. I asked him to explain what he meant, and he said that he thinks I'm too independent and career-focused to be a good wife and mother. He thinks that I'll be too busy with my job to take care of a family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I have always thought of myself as a hard-working and ambitious person, but I never thought that my career goals would be a problem in my relationship. I told my boyfriend that I was hurt by his words and that I didn't think it was fair to judge me based on my career aspirations. He apologized and said that he didn't mean it the way it came out. He said that he loves me and wants to be with me, but he's just not sure if I'm the right person to settle down with and start a family with. I was devastated. I couldn't understand how my boyfriend could say something like that to me. I felt like he was trying to hold me back and limit my potential. I told him that I needed some time to think about our relationship and where it was going. I spent the next few days thinking about what my boyfriend had said. I couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't truly support me and my goals. I started to wonder if I was wasting my time with him. I decided to talk to my friends and family about the situation. They were all shocked and upset by what my boyfriend had said. They told me that I deserved someone who would support and encourage me, not hold me back. I realized that they were right. I didn't want to be with someone who didn't believe in me and my abilities. I decided to end the relationship and focus on my career and personal growth. It's been a few weeks since I broke up with my boyfriend, and I have to admit, it's been tough. I miss him and the life we had together, but I know that I made the right decision. I deserve to be with someone who supports and encourages me, not someone who tries to hold me back. So, am I the a-hole for ending my relationship because my boyfriend doesn't think I'm wife material? I don't think so. I think I made the right choice for myself and my future. Let me know what you think in the comments, sincerely confused and hurt. Am I the a-hole for withdrawing a significant financial contribution to my brother's wedding, after my future sister-in-law and her mother became increasingly demanding and treated me like an endless ATM throwaway account for obvious reasons? This has caused massive family drama, and I honestly don't know if I handled it correctly, even though I feel justified. I know this is long, but there's a lot of history and detail needed to understand the situation fully. Background: I, 38F, am the older sister of brother's name. Let's call him Tom, 32M. We also have a younger sister, 30F, and our parents. Our family was pretty average growing up, middle class, comfortable but not wealthy. We were taught the value of hard work and saving. I worked hard, got a good education, made smart career choices, and have been fortunate enough to become quite financially successful in the tech industry. I'm single, no kids, own my home outright, have solid investments, and live comfortably. I'm not a millionaire swimming in gold coins, but I'm definitely in a different financial bracket than the rest of my family. Tom is a great guy, genuinely, kind and easygoing, sometimes bordering on conflict avoidant. He works a steady, respectable job, but it's not high-paying. He met his fiancée's name, let's call her Chloe, 31F, about 3 years ago. Chloe is lovely, vibrant, and initially seemed very sweet and grounded. They fell in love, got engaged about 1.5 years ago, and planned their wedding for this coming fall. When they first got engaged, everyone in the family was thrilled. Wedding planning started almost immediately. Chloe comes from a family that frankly seems to have higher expectations for social events than their budget might comfortably allow. Her mother, fiancé's mother's name, let's call her Eleanor, 60F, is very concerned with appearances and seems to believe that certain things must be done a certain way for a wedding to be proper or memorable. Early on, the stress of wedding costs became apparent. Tom and Chloe were trying to be responsible, looking at venues and vendors that fit a modest budget they had started saving for. However, it was clear that the kind of wedding Chloe and Eleanor were envisioning was significantly more expensive than Tom and Chloe could afford on their own savings, plus whatever contribution Chloe's parents might make, which, it turned out, was less than expected, mostly covering the dress and incidentals. The offer. Seeing their stress and honestly wanting to do something special for my brother and his future wife, I made an offer. I told Tom and Chloe that I wanted to contribute significantly to their wedding budget, to help them have some of the things they dreamed of but couldn't afford. My specific words were something along the lines of, I want to help you guys out. I can contribute a large specific amount, let's say $50,000 for the sake of specificity, though the exact number isn't as important as the scale of the offer relative to their budget, towards making your dream wedding happen. Think of it as a gift from me to help make your special day less stressful and more magical. This offer was generously received. They were incredibly grateful, hugged me, thanked me profusely, and talked about how much this would help them secure their preferred venue, get better catering, maybe a live band they loved, etc. The original discussions were focused on this amount helping cover maybe half or a little more of the projected total cost, allowing them to relax about the big-ticket items. The shift. Initially, things were great. They booked a beautiful venue they loved, something they couldn't have afforded without my help. They seemed genuinely happy and relieved. However, over the next few months, the tone began to shift subtly, then not so subtly. Chloe and Eleanor started making decisions and adding things to the wedding plans that seemed to rapidly consume and then exceed the budget we'd loosely discussed, including my $50,000 contribution. It started with small things, upgrading the invitation paper, adding extra floral arrangements. When Tom or Chloe would express concern about the cost, Eleanor would often say something like, "Oh, don't worry, my name is helping us out. She can manage it," or "It's only slightly over budget and my name wouldn't want you to miss out on this." The requests became more extravagant. They decided the photographer they initially budgeted for wasn't good enough. They needed a specific, highly sought-after one who cost 3 times as much. They insisted on a top-shelf open bar for the entire reception, not just beer and wine with signature cocktails, as originally discussed. They added a lavish welcome dinner the night before the wedding, a farewell brunch the day after, and expected these to be covered. They started talking about high-end wedding favors, expecting me to fund thousands of dollars in personalized trinkets. Every time a new, expensive idea came up, the expectation was that my money would cover it. There were fewer thank yous and more assumptions. Conversations about money became awkward. If I asked about the budget or where things stood, I'd get vague answers or be told not to worry about it because it's all under control. Or more tellingly, "You're covering the big things, so we can afford these smaller touches." Problem was, the smaller touches were adding up to tens of thousands of dollars on top of the big things. Eleanor was the primary driver of this. She'd call me or text Chloe with extravagant ideas. "Chloe, darling, we simply must have a string quartet for the ceremony. It adds such elegance. And my name would love that, wouldn't she?" She started treating me less like a generous benefactor and more like the primary financier who was obligated to fulfill every whim. She made comments about my lifestyle. "Oh, surely this extra $10,000 for artisanal cheeses at the cocktail hour is nothing to you, given your beautiful house," which felt incredibly tacky and presumptive. I tried, gently at first, to pump the brakes. I reminded them that my offer was a gift towards their wedding, intended to alleviate stress and enable some dreams, not a blank check for unlimited spending. I suggested we look at the budget together realistically. This was met with eye rolls, defensiveness, or being told I was being stressful or not understanding their vision. My brother Tom was mostly passive through this. When I'd talked to him privately, he'd admit he was also uncomfortable with some of the expenses and his fiancée future Mill's attitude, but he didn't want to cause conflict. He'd say, "It's mostly Chloe and her mom. They get carried away, but it's her special day, you know." This was frustrating, as it felt like he was letting me be the bad cop or the unlimited money supply to avoid confronting his fiancée and future Emile. The breaking point. The situation reached a head about 2 months ago. They requested a meeting with me to finalize the budget details. I agreed, hoping for a sensible discussion. Instead, Chloe and Eleanor presented a revised final budget that was astronomical. It included everything from designer shoes and accessories for the bridal party, which I was apparently expected to cover, to a professional dance troupe for entertainment, customized projection mapping on the venue walls, and a fireworks display. The total cost was now double what was originally planned, and they were clearly expecting me to cover not just the original $50,000 plus cost overruns on the initial items, but a significant portion of all this new, over-the-top stuff. When I looked at the number, my jaw probably dropped. I calmly but firmly said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. My offer was for $50,000 to help with the main wedding costs, like the venue and catering. This budget is proposing I fund things far beyond that, things we never discussed. That frankly seemed extravagant and unnecessary." Eleanor immediately jumped in, saying, "Extravagant? This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You're lucky you're in a position to help make it truly spectacular. We just assumed since you're so generous, and you have plenty of resources, You'd want to see this made perfect. It's not that much more, really, when you consider the overall picture. It's an additional $50,000 on top of the $50 I already offered, I stated, trying to keep my voice level. That's not that much more. My offer was a gift to help, not an open-ended commitment to fund every luxury you can think of. Chloe then started to look teary and said, But we thought you understood this is our dream wedding. We've already told the vendors we want these things. We can't back out now. This is where I probably became the a-hole, but I was so fed up with the entitlement and being treated like a wallet with no feelings or boundaries. I looked directly at both of them and said slowly and clearly, my offer was conditional on respect, gratitude, and a shared understanding of what that money was for. You have repeatedly demonstrated a lack of all three. You've treated my generosity as an expectation, dismissed my concerns, ignored budget realities, and added demand after demand without consultation, assuming I would just pay. Frankly, the way you've acted is ungrateful and entitled. Because of that, I am withdrawing my offer completely. Silence. Shock registered on their faces. I continued, I will still give you a wedding gift, of course, as your future sister-in-law. It will be a generous gift, fitting for the occasion, but it will be a gift based on my standard gifting principles, not funding your entire extravagant event. You will need to adjust your budget significantly based on the funds you actually have available from yourselves and other family. Eleanor erupted. You can't do that. You promised. You're ruining her wedding. How can you be so cruel and selfish with your money? Chloe started crying properly at this point. I can't believe you would do this after we planned everything. You planned everything based on money you didn't confirm you had, I corrected her, though maybe I shouldn't have bothered. My offer was contingent on reasonable planning and respectful communication, neither of which occurred.